You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
Do want to start with the news late last night and then earlier today about LSU cornerback Denver Harris entering the transfer portal. And the overall take on this is it's not a shock. It's kind of the same thing we talked about with Deuce Chestnut on Wednesday. It's not a shock. It's just now official that Denver is into the transfer portal. The intrigue that kind of surrounds it, though, is known, right? I mean, right? We're gonna kind of go through some things that Brian Kelly said throughout the year and even before the year regarding Denver Harris that tell you everything you need to know about why this didn't work out at LSU. But what I really want to do after that is take this conversation broader and look at LSU's performance under Brian Kelly in the transfer portal as a whole, because that did come up last night and again a little bit earlier this morning when this news happened. And what I found is also shouldn't really be surprising. But let's talk Denver Harris specifically for a minute. Obviously, everyone knew the baggage that came along with this, the indefinite suspension at Texas A&M at his freshman year. Then he hops in the portal. You immediately knew LSU was going to be on him. There's the tie to LSU. He's a former 5-star. You needed help in the secondary. It made too much sense, and you knew the risk that kind of came along with it. And Brian Kelly was asked about that back in March when they were going through spring and Denver Harris had signed. Brian Kelly talked about going through with this, signing Denver Harris with the known risk, despite the known risk in the off-the-field issues.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we did a lot of research. This was not a decision that we just said, here's a great player. He had to fit. We felt like, we did our due diligence in terms of his background, and, there's an affiliation with LSU here with the family. He had a lot of people speak on his behalf. He had a number of interviews with Coach House and myself, and we felt with the culture in which we have put together here that he would make it here because the culture is really strong. And it's proven to be that he's done well early on, and he has no choice. He has to make it.
It was the end of that bite that everyone kept replaying, where we feel like the culture is strong enough here that he could make it. He has no choice. He has to make it. So there was going to be that adjustment period that he was going to have to kind of learn a new way to do things. And I think everyone, the speculation about what kind of led to where you are now, late in the season, it got really quiet around that. Anytime Brian Kelly was asked about Denver Harris and Deuce Chestnut for that matter, it was always, they're not with us right now. We'll have a sit down, have a conversation and things of that nature. But starting with that cut that we just played in March, it continued. There were moments throughout the year where Brian Kelly told you what was going on when he was constantly asked, why is Denver Harris not on the field? Is there a chance? What's his status? Things of that nature. This is from September the 1st when Brian Kelly was asked this. Before the first game of the year, he's asked about, okay, well, how's Denver Harris coming along? Can you see him against Florida State?
Denver is in that process of learning how to do things a little bit differently than he had been doing it before. So it's becoming, clear to him what he needs to do on a day-to-day basis to find the field here. And look, he's got a lot of ability, but it's more in this program than just having athletic ability. He's got to do the work in the classroom. He's got to do the work, in terms of the day-to-day details and making good choices, good decisions, and he's making progress there. But, it's a journey for him right now.
And 10 days later, On September the 11th, Brian Kelly again asked about Denver Harris, and the refrain was pretty similar to what he just said in that previous cut.
He's making progress. There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm not going to put a guy on the field unless, he is committed to our process. He is not there yet, but I don't know if there's any one guy I can say in our program has got it down yet, but he is committed to it. So if you're committed to it, we're going to work with you. It's the guys that are not committed to it, the guys that don't want to do the little things the right way, that we're going to let you figure it out, and we'll let you figure it out watching. He tried that. He didn't like watching. So he's doing a good job.
Then in October, Brian Kelly was asked again, gave a really short answer, said he's maturing, and by the middle of October, Denver Harris was inactive and you didn't see him again, and now he's in the transfer portal. When you listen to what Brian, even though it got quiet towards the end, when you listen to what he said earlier, the way he talked about it, the culture is strong enough that we think he can make it, and he has no choice. He has to make it. It's a journey for him. He's learning to do things a different way. It's not just about talent and ability in this program. It's about how we do things in this program. I'm not going to put a player on the field who isn't committed to our process, and he's not there yet. We have ways to work with people. If you're not committed, you can watch. He didn't like watching. It's a risk you knew you were taking, and it's unfortunate that it ended this way. And it's unfortunate for Denver Harris because he is an extremely talented player. There's just been things he can't shake that have prevented his talent from being displayed now at two different schools. You wish him the best of luck going forward. I know I certainly do, because I want to see people reach their potential and be able to put the immense talent that he has on display. And yes, it is unfortunate that it won't happen at LSU. But while I have a few minutes, I did want to dovetail that into a bigger conversation about LSU's performance in the transfer portal, because after you lose Deuce Chestnut, after you lose Denver Harris, two guys who were highly thought of coming in as transfers at a big position of need for LSU this year, and then you saw the performance that unit had without those two guys reaching full potential. I think LSU's performance in the transfer portal obviously has come under a microscope a little bit, where it could be viewed right now as a failure, but I wonder as a whole if that opinion is just recency bias. So what I did is I went back through the 2022 transfer class, the 2023 transfer class, and looked at each player and kind of gave them a designation as a hit, a miss, solid contributor, or then a depth piece. And there were some that came through to kind of just see what it really looked like. In 2022, LSU signed 19 guys out of the transfer portal. Let's start with Jaden Daniels. Unquestioned hit. We can all agree on that, right? There's nothing else to be said. The guy won a Heisman Trophy. That was a hit. Sevyn Banks at the cornerback position. I didn't actually label that hit, miss, solid piece, or depth. I labeled that kind of a NA, non-applicable, because, I mean, he came here with medical problems, then had the scary moment against Auburn, and because of that, it never really materialized. So you can kind of, unfortunately, throw that one out. We'll never know there. Greg Brooks Jr., that's a hit. He was great for you in the 2022 season, was playing really well early in this season, and of course we know the scary medical emergency that he's been dealing with his brain and things of that nature, and you continue to wish him speedy recovery. But I will count that as a hit because he was producing very, very well for LSU. Mekhi Wingo, hit. He was an All-American, hit. West Weeks went with solid contributor, depth piece. He's contributed a lot on special teams, maybe not at the linebacker position as you would want. Colby Fields, linebacker. I went ahead and labeled that one a miss in 2022. I don't know how much you really expected him to contribute, but he came from an SEC program. You thought, okay, that good enough to play, South Carolina or be recruited to South Carolina in an SEC school. Can you go forward? Kyron Lacey, solid contributor right now, really improved from last year to this year. Don't totally want to call it a hit yet. He potentially has another year, so solid. Jarek Bernard-Converse, hit. Miles Frazier, hit. He started every game. Tremont Shorts, depth piece in his final year. Move on. Mekhi Garner, that was a hit. Princeton Malbrew went with the depth piece. He's played a lot on special teams and things of that nature. He's moved from defensive end to linebacker. Colby Richardson, labeled that as a miss. They wanted him to be a starting cornerback. He started last season as a starting cornerback, and it didn't work out. He started 5 of your first 6 games. It didn't work out, so we'll go miss. Noah Kane, solid depth piece, 10 touchdowns last season, which ranked, I believe, 4th in the SEC. Running backs, or maybe at a little higher. I don't have it in front of me for me. Solid piece, but never really carved himself out as the starter, but definitely not a miss. Joe Fouché, that was a hit/solid performer there for LSU. Played in 7 games, had a few injuries. Jay Bramblett is the punter, gave him a hit. You didn't see him much this year, so I'm not going to dock the inconsistent performance. Greg Clayton, solid performer. He really saved you in special teams by catching the ball. And then Slade Roy, long snapper, sure hit. I haven't seen snaps go over the punter's head or, botch snaps on field goals, so we'll give that a hit. When you look at 2023, LSU signed 13 transfers. Denver Harris, who we just talked about, that's a miss. Aaron Anderson, I went solid performer / miss because you haven't been able to see him enough that I'm totally on it. But the one thing he was kind of brought here to do in the immediacy was the return game, and it didn't work out. So that's why I went there. He's going to have another year. He could easily work himself into just solid contributor. J.K. Johnson went with the NA there on that non-equal. The guy broke a bone in his leg in camp. We never saw him. Jury's out. I'm not going to call that a miss or a hit or anything like that. Jalen Lee went with solid depth. When they needed him this year, he was out there. We'll see if he can materialize a little bit more. Deuce Chestnut obviously was a miss. Logan Diggs, that was a hit. Braden Swinson went with hit, solid performer. Gave him the hit because of how he performed at the end of this year, and we'll see. He's going to have another year, should be back, and maybe can really turn into a great pass rusher at LSU because he showed flashes towards the end. Ovia Gofu went with miss. You thought he was going to come in, a veteran guy from Texas, had history with Brian Kelly, thought he was going to come in and take that jack spot, didn't do it. Braden Swinson beat him out there, so we'll go miss there. Omar Spates, I went with miss. Omar played a lot of football for LSU, but regressed. It's an first-team all Pac-12 guy, freshman All-American at Oregon State, 89 tackles last season, another 80-plus tackle season the year before that. You expected him to come in and contribute that, and instead, yes, there were some injuries, but you saw when he was down, a guy like Whit Weeks really flash, and Omar was never really able. It didn't translate all the way from the Pac-12 to the SEC, so for what you expected him to be coming in to what he was, I had to go with a miss there on that one. Paris Shand, solid, and then that piece, Mason Lunsford, that piece so far. Jordan Jefferson did label as a hit. He was one of your best defensive linemen all year. Zy Alexander, solid contributor, probably your best cornerback. Ended up with the season-ending injury, and then Andre Sam went solid / miss because he played really, really hard. At some points in the year, he looked overmatched. So when you go through that, 32 players, 10 came out as unquestioned hits. A third, unquestioned hits of those guys. But you did have 6 in there that you look at unquestioned misses, and all of them were at cornerback and linebacker. And that's where it comes in. That's where you need to do better because the rest of them have been solid. 12 solid in depth piece guys. You had 2 of them that you didn't really have anything. When you look at LSU's approach in the portal, I don't think it's broken. I don't think they've failed there. I think they've actually been pretty darn good, except for 2 positions, and that's where they need to get better. And it doesn't just have to be in the portal. You can do it in high school recruiting, which is something Brian Kelly has talked an awful lot about, wanting the retention that they have and now being able to build it through the high school ranks and develop. But when you look at them as a whole, I think it can be considered recency bias. And because it's at 2 big positions of need that, yes, they need to figure out, but that magnified it so much more. They've been very good offensively there. They've been good on the defensive line. It's been linebacker and cornerback, and that's what they need to figure out, whether it be in the portal or in high school recruiting. And you've seen some attrition here. There most likely will be some type of change on the staff as well defensively. We'll see what that leads to. But to say LSU's failed in the portal totally, I think is flat out wrong. So we'll see where they go from here. But thought that was an interesting exercise because did see that a lot. Kind of after this news that, man, it's fallen apart for them, and they haven't been as successful in the portal as maybe they should be.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.